All right, guys, we're back on the Kevin and Fred show, and today I'm joined by Michael Valdes, who is the president of EXP Global. Michael, how you doing today, man?
I'm doing great, my brother. How are you doing?
I'm doing so good. One of my favorite things about you, and I don't even think I really need to point it out, is man, it's your energy. Like when you show up to a conversation or show up in a room, like you were there, and I absolutely love that about you, man. So I'm excited to have you on the show today.
You know what? I just mirror your actions, brother. You do the exact same thing. So I love being here with you.
Love it, man. Well, so Michael, one couple of things I want to talk about today is because you've
Yeah,
got, I mean, you've got a really cool career background, right? Having been in banking prior to real estate and having done so much internationally, I would love to let's go backwards. Like let's be prior to
sure.
EXP, right? So you worked at Realogy Corporation for what about 15 years or so? Do I have that
Correct.
right?
Yep.
And in there, as like if I remember correctly, senior vice president or vice president of global servicing. I mean, when we hear global, what does that mean? All I think is not in the United States. Tell me a little bit about that.
So it's exactly that, not in the US. So with the Realogy, it was all six Realogy brands, which was Sotheby's, Coldwell Banker, Century 21, ERA, Better Homes and Garden, and Corcoran. And so collectively, it was 113 countries, and it was about 300,000 agents. So when we say global, we mean global. And
Yeah,
so
that's pretty
um,
global.
yeah, and so it was just so exciting when I first met Jason and then met Glenn and really found out what this was all about and found out what EXP was and then understood that it was the agent that was the brand and that you weren't working for the other brands, but actually the agent's the brand. And when I actually got that, I was like, oh my God, this is unstoppable. And so that's what it's actually sort of been. And the journey has been extraordinary. You know, I've been here, I joined in May of 2020. And so I've been here almost a year and a half now. And so in that, short span of time, we've been able to open 14 countries around the globe. And the growth that we have done, we're just shy of 7,000 agents outside of the US right now.
Wow.
And we've really sort of grown quite a lot when we've sort of done this. We're now at double digits of what our agent counts are outside of the United States. So we're probably at about 11% right now. And so it's just growing. What I love to say, Kevin, is that we're just getting started.
Well, there's no doubt we are. I'll tell you, I remember that day in May of 2020 when they announced your hire. And I remember speaking to you, myself and Fred, my business partner, and Andrew
Yeah,
Franklin, who's number one agent at the company, met with
yeah.
you in the virtual world office. And I just remember thinking and talking to Fred and Andrew going, guys, this company just grew up in a big way. This guy is going to make a huge impact
No.
on this global opportunity that we have. And when you put it that way, did you just say 14 countries now?
Yeah. 14
Whoa.
new countries. So we're at 18 countries total, right? So we opened 14 countries in the last 18 months.
That's wild. I'm just,
Isn't
not
that
from a
wild?
competition thing, but like because you've got the experience having been in the global real estate game for so long. Is that fast or is that fast? I mean, or
No,
am I
that's super fast. That's never been done in our industry. To really sort of think about the fact that we've done that without ever getting on a plane, by the way, during a pandemic. It's actually never been done. And it wasn't me. It's sort of like, it's like, there might be some expertise that was brought into this to speed up the process, but it really was everyone that's a part of this organization. My team has been amazing, but we also have 67,000 wonderful ambassadors across this brand that really were as excited as I was about this global story and the global growth. And listen, everyone has participated so incredibly as to what this story is. And you know what's so beautiful, Kevin, is that everyone who is a part of this EXP culture. Everyone sort of says that it's a family and it's an overused terminology, but it actually is here. And when you
yeah.
start sort of thinking about the fact of we start looking at what we start talking about, we don't talk about what's our agent counts that we've sort of added. What we actually talk about on my team, especially, is how many lives that we touch. And that's what is the difference, because that's what we are. We're just really servants to others. And when we start thinking about this and the way that this EXP model has changed so many people's lives, when you start talking about that, and you've heard me talk about it in other speeches, when I start talking about it as the gift, and it truly is a gift that we've all received. And it's our responsibility, because it's changed our life, to just share that gift with others. And that's all we're doing. So this is like such a beautiful movement to be a part of.
Yeah, yeah, I'm glad you brought that. I was gonna ask you about that because I heard you mention that not too long ago about something to the effect of, it seems like it hasn't been a day go by now in now year and a half that you've been here that someone hasn't said this company's completely changed my life.
Oh,
And the when you it's so hard, it can be so hard to hear,
yeah.
but when you experience it and when someone shares that, even when it's not even your life that's been changed, although for so many of us, as you know, it has, but when someone you know or work for, work with, whatever, shares that with you, that is just one of the most powerful things on the planet, in my opinion.
Kevin, just when you're starting now we're all starting to start doing events again, right? And so there've been quite a few events that have happened this year. Some of them have been quite large events. We're about to do our EXPCon next week in Las Vegas with several thousand people in attendance. But when you start doing these again, and people start coming up to you and sharing their stories to you, and you start hearing stories of somebody who was ill, that had cancer, that couldn't afford the operation had it not been for revenue share because they were uninsurable. They literally wouldn't be on this earth today if it wasn't for that type of program that Glenn started with, this beautiful model so many years ago. When somebody tells you the story and they have tears in your eyes, there's nothing that doesn't fit on a P&L, that
Yeah.
doesn't fit on a balance sheet. You know, we're talking about the emotional effect of what this model has done. And, you know, and even on a greater scale, I was on an interview with our broker in Mexico, for example, and he said that my country needed this. Could you imagine the influence of that statement when
Wow.
someone's talking about it's just a model, it's an EXP model. My country needed this, and what he meant by that was that this was the greatest equalizer, right? We don't have any offices, which means that there is a great team that could be in the outskirts of some town where an office would never go up because there's not enough critical mass there. But yet now, because of our platform, which is exactly that, a virtual platform, where someone can go and join EXP Mexico and actually have the opportunity to better not only their own lives, but that of their family and of their community. It was the greatest equalizer that entered. The same story in India. There was a great team that came over from India. It was a 300-member team from one of our competitors, and just a team. Imagine, sort of like India is a place of 1.3 billion people. They have over 2 million real estate agents by best estimate, because it is not a licensed profession in India. But when you start thinking about those vast numbers, it's a 300-member team by a well-known competitor of ours in India. And they came over and they looked at what our model was. And by the way, we're over 1,000 agents in India in 10 months of operation. And
Jeez.
so it's something where it resonates. The story that we're telling is resonating. This gentleman, before he was going to join his 300 members, said, I want to just speak with Michael. And I said, of course. And so I was on the phone with him. And he said to me, Michael, do you know why we want to join EXP? And I said, please tell me, Dinesh. And he says, we studied your model, and your model was made for humanity. It floored me. It floored me, because this is someone who actually encompassed what we are all about in that one sentence.
That really is. You know, it's funny. I tell people all the time. I get asked, obviously, and I'm talking about EXP, what feels like constantly. And people ask me, "What is it? What why is everyone going there? Why is it growing so fast?" And the easy answer is to think it's the money and it's the stock opportunities. And but the reality is, I believe the secret sauce is what that creates, and what
Yes.
like what you just said, what that does for humanity. I did not know that he had said that. I mean, that's a super powerful statement.
Oh my
Um,
God.
man,
Yeah.
and that makes it easy to see why it's grown so fast and will continue to grow. Without, I would never put you on the spot with a crystal ball prediction, but when you think about what you're going after, say in 2022 for EXP, and now I know you've got your hands full, man. You're handling stuff here domestically, you're handling stuff
I
globally.
am.
Where do you see the global real estate market going, and how big of a piece can EXP be of that in the next, say, 1 to 2 years?
Listen, as I said, this is an unstoppable model because we are, in fact, the idea that the agent becomes the brand. We're going to be sharing some very specific goals next week, so can't give you
All
anything up
right.
front, but we're going to be sharing some specific goals. And what we're actually going to put out there is actually a 5-year goal, which is a goal that's going to blow a lot of people's mind, but it's going to blow up social media as well. So that's going to be your teaser of the day.
I
And
love it.
so I think I speak on that Tuesday morning. So by Tuesday afternoon, it's going to be a new hashtag that'll be blowing up our social media.
That's fantastic. I'm
Yes.
looking forward to that.
Yeah.
I just to see what you've done. I remember talking with the broker in India as well too, right at the very beginning, and just
Yes.
thinking, gosh, this guy's he's just a really good person. And but to hearing less than a year later, we're already over 1,000 agents there. That
Amazing.
that's pretty amazing. What led you to the global space, Michael? Because you could have certainly done anything. You had a great career going in banking. You got into real estate. Was it global right away? Was that the role you initially came into?
It always was, even my banking world was always very global. So, my mom is from Madrid. I spent quite a lot of time in Europe, and my background was always very international. And so it was something that I was just raised with, and so everything that I've done has always been with a very global focus from a very early age in my career. And so when I moved over to real estate from banking, I actually was I actually was an agent for a while in Florida, and I was just focused on international clients coming into Miami, and so I had them all from my banking days. And so in the first year of my business, I was actually ranked in the top 1% of the state of Florida in my
Wow.
very first year in production. And so it was something that was incredible. And so I moved over to the corporate side in 2010. So I've been on the corporate side for the majority of my real estate career, but in the beginning I actually was in production for about 5 years, also under the Realogy brand under Sotheby's. And so it was something that I always sort of like grew in what was that global focus. So it's a place that I feel super comfortable in, and it's a place that I know very well.
That's awesome. That's a really cool story. I did not understand. I did not know that part about production early on, and
Yeah.
that makes total sense. Let me ask you this: having gone through that, there's agents out there, I think, that have interest in doing it, being able to serve clients globally. Or at least maybe it's just beginning of a dream. Maybe it's something that they've been after for a while. What kind of advice do you give those agents?
Understand the why they want to go global. It's not just the idea that, everyone who is an agent. I mean, imagine there's 1.4 million agents in the United States alone that are a member of NAR. So when you start thinking about those that are not a member of NAR, you have over 2 million agents in the United States. And so when you start thinking about that, it's like, what's your why? What makes you different? And then whatever that is that why strong enough to be a global message? Start thinking of it in that manner. And it's always what we started saying earlier. It's of always being service to others, right? It's not really wanting to have your brand go international, because that's sort of like you looking inward. You always have to look outward in order to see how you help others. And if that message is pure enough, then you start looking at those partners that you can go and work with. You don't know the market in other places outside of where you are. You are a local, real estate is localized. You are a local expert that is trying to build yourself globally. So find those partners that are on the other side of that equation. Because if you start thinking about it, if you're in Los Angeles and you are trying to get yourself out there in mainland China or in Hong Kong, and because you have Chinese buyers that are coming into Los Angeles, you don't know the market in Beijing, you don't know the market in Shanghai, but there are going to be people on the other side of that equation that are just as interested to have somebody in LA that they can work with. So make sure that you start a relationship, because that's what all the things that we do in this business is relationship driven. So it is, if it's an idea of expanding out globally, make sure that you do it as a relationship driven catalyst for that. And you will start building a lot more relationships, because then your message is much clearer. There's a lot of cultural nuances that come into play when you start looking at other cultures. And we could inadvertently, from a very myopic sort of way that we look at things, could go in and insult someone culturally by not really wanting to do any of this, but it actually is something that you have to go out and learn a bit. And sometimes you'll learn and scrape your knee and get up and sort of like dust it off and keep going. But it's really the idea of knowing what the why is for yourself, and whether that why is strong enough to be a global message.
Yeah, that's powerful. That's and I think probably solid advice, whether we're talking about expanding outside globally, or just expanding inside your current network and your current town
Yeah,
where you're operating, right?
that's right.
One of the other things you do, Michael, and I'm always so fascinated. I'm thinking, like, how does this guy have time to do all the things he's doing? So you've got a podcast as well, the Global Luxury Real Estate Mastermind. How long has that been going? What sparked that for you?
So that was going almost 2 years now, believe it or not. And I started that right at the start of the pandemic. And so I started it because I used to mentor a lot of people that were coming into the industry, and it was a finite number of people that I could touch. And so it was something that I really wanted to help as many people as I could with the knowledge base that I had. And so then I actually have a business coach, and we were just bouncing ideas around. And so she was the one that suggested the idea of starting a podcast. And I started that. And it was a great instrument that really quickly grew. We're now distributed in over 90 countries. We're on every major podcast distribution channel, and there's 13 million downloads thus far across the globe. So it's been a really powerful message that's gone out there, and it's on every week, and it's a lot of fun.
That's awesome. That is a cool way to touch a lot of people. I personally do this for a more selfish reason. I like to learn. So I feel like it socially gives me the chance to just be awkward and pepper people with questions that I want to learn from. I figure as long as I
Yes.
record it and distribute it, then it's more socially acceptable. So it's good.
You
Let
know
me
what?
ask.
I'll tell you something. It's interesting you say that, because I learn from every single guest that I have on. And I literally just did a podcast interview earlier, just right before I jumped on with you. And it was with Andre Kokoski, who is one of the most celebrated global architects in the world. He's done projects in from like his client list are things from like the Guggenheim Museum,
Wow.
the Hudson Yards in New York. It was Lignée Rosé in Venice. So it was like huge sort of projects. I mean, like a sick architect, and world famous. And so we started chatting, and the way that he describes how he looks at a building, he started talking about like the materials that he uses on a building as the skin of the building. He animated an edifice for me. And I was just like, that was the coolest thing ever. I've never heard of architect, he sort of like was talking about, like, instead of sort of saying I use concrete and wood and this and that, it was like, I needed to know what the skin of the building was going to be like. And I was like, wow, that was the most awesome thing for me, because it was so poetic in a way of describing a building. that's such an inanimate object. He animated it for me. And that was beautiful just a few minutes ago. And that was so great.
That's I think that's one of the things that people that are great at what they do, they see that thing differently than the rest of us, right? And they're able
So true.
to really see much further beyond what the rest of us kind of see on the surface. And I think that's probably true for any real true expert or master of their craft. What just a
And
couple
I'll
of
tell
rapid.
you, to that point, I think that's, again, bringing it back to EXP for a moment. I think that's another sort of reason as to why we have been as successful as we have. We're now the largest independent real estate company in the industry. And so when you start sort of looking at it in that manner, we don't look at it like, oh, it's sort of like, let's compete on a higher commission basis. What we're actually talking about is a story of legacy. And no one is talking about that. And so that's what I think is when you start sort of what you just sort of said, looking at something from a different angle and a different perspective. That's what this is.
So often the people that are geniuses or great or create something, they look at something, but then it's just a slightly different view, and it
That's right.
opens up a world of possibilities.
That's right.
When you look, I mean, even when you look at our, look at our rev share opportunity, that's just a slightly
Yeah.
different view on something else that was okay. And what it did is opened up so many possibilities. I'm curious, you a reader? Do you like to read a lot of books?
I read a fair amount. It's sort of like right now, it's just one of those things with just the schedule. It gets a little bit more cumbersome, but I do a lot of audiobooks actually.
What's the best one you listened to so far this year?
Actually, what I'm going through is the Leonardo da Vinci biography.
Oh, really?
Oh my God, it was one of the most fascinating like people who's ever lived.
That sounds fascinating, actually. Again, talking about another
Yeah.
master, so much to be learned from reading about and reading from people that are really true masters at whatever it is that they do, understanding their seeing the nuances that they see, and learning just a little bit about them and kind of the way they view the world is, I think, super insightful.
I mean, just think about Leonardo da Vinci that sort of like created what was the precursor of the modern helicopter 600 years ago as an engineer. And it was something that he wanted to be an engineer, but it was also obviously a master artist. But that was actually his second calling. And if it wasn't for the Medici family that was his sponsor, he just needed a job. And so to create one of the most truest masters in the art world, it's really so fascinating that was his second choice.
Man, that really is wild when you put it in context like that. That's super wild. Well, Michael, I promised I'd get you out of here pretty soon, and we're about to wrap up. What last question I have for you, besides
Yes,
where can
sir.
people catch up with you? But what's something we should have talked about? I haven't asked you about. People maybe don't know about Michael, or just a question I should have asked that I haven't so far.
Well, heck, I don't know. It's like I'm a pretty open book. It's like I do a lot of these things. It's I don't know. It's the fact that there's a great passion that I have for this and for helping others, and really in being in community with people like you who are such great leaders out there and get the message out. And I will always support that with you, my brother.
That's awesome, man. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. If so, one more time, what's the name of the podcast and any other place that people should catch up with you at?
Sure. It's the Global Luxury Real Estate Mastermind. And so it's actually the initials is GLREM.com. The website is there. All the podcasts are there. There's links to sort of how to reach me on there as well.
Awesome.
So that's all great.
Cool. And we'll link to that here in the show notes. Michael
Thank you,
Valdes,
brother.
thank you so much for taking some time out of your busy schedule. And we will see you very soon, my friend.
Yes, we will. Always great to see you, Kevin. Thank you so much.
All right, guys. We'll see you next
Talk to you
week.
soon. Bye-bye now.
Bye-bye.